Hi plant junkies, my name is Jody from plantjunkiecreations.com. Today I wanted to make a video specifically for someone named Helen who had a question, hi Helen, about some cuttings she received and what to do next. And I wanted to show her how to do that and what I do. So ignore this plant. Let me start over. So this is a plant I really don't care about, and it was writing up here and I thought I was recording, but it wasn't recording, so I'm redoing it again. So this was a vining plant that I had cut, but for Helen's sake, she received a cutting that was similar to a curled leaf. And I'm not sure of her situation, if she got it locally from someone or if it was shipped. From my experience, when you get a shipped plant of philodendrons, Pothos, a pretty similar care, if the leaves are curled like that, it's most likely gonna die. But the prize here is the actual stem, the node. You can really honestly get lucky, not lucky, but you can get the plant, you can even get more than one plant by having multiple nodes. Because if you sit here and you keep the leaf on it, it's not going to promote the roots. It didn't have roots. I don't know if I said that. Her cuttings didn't have roots. So I'm going to show her how to do that. So replay from what you missed is, say this was up here, okay? I literally took my scissors, chopped it off, chopped a bunch of them, and I'm going to show you what I would do. You have different options here, but this is what I would do. So the goal for this is to have roots, right? Well, since it doesn't have roots, it's taking more energy to keep these leaves alive than you can't have leaves if you don't have roots. So it's important to establish roots before leaves. And with these nodes, if you take off this leaf, and be careful when you do that, depending on how far gone your stem is, it might rip the stem or hurt the potential leaf. So I'm going to just rip that off, and if you look, under every leaf is always a potential new leaf under there. That little green triangle that you see, that's going to be a new leaf. Now if I turn this around, you see that little brown nub? That is a potential root. Okay, now what I would do with that is, again, it matters how much energy is going to this right now. So what I would do is, since I know that this is the top and that the leaves like to grow up towards the light, because it can get confusing, I'm going to explain in a second. So I like to cut it shorter up at the top, because what's the point in having a long stem, more energy wasted on the stem when it can focus its energy on that root, right? Now I know that's the top. A typical general rule is to have your node to be about 1 inch long, but sometimes I have it shorter, less energy. So this is kind of a weird stem, but I would cut, general rule, 1/2 inch below. So ideally, most people would have 1 inch long node, but for me to know which side is upright, I cut the top shorter, because there's no need. It's not necessary. As long as you have that little triangle, like I was showing you, there's no need to have a 1/2 inch stem up there. You can, but you don't have to. Okay, and now here's the rest of that, right? So second option you can do is, why not just cut the top of that stem off? You can keep that leaf. You have the option to put it in water, but for me, owning a shop, I find that using water takes longer, and this is the reason, this is my reason, is plants, in order to get roots, they want to find the water. So why sit it in water? There's no need, why develop roots if it's already in water? So if you force a plant to find water, if you were to place it on dirt, sphagnum moss, which I'm going to show you, and moisten it, not drench it, but moisten it. So when I say moist, pre-soak your soil mix, put it in a bowl, put your soil or your sphagnum, and when you squeeze it, you basically want 1 or 2 drops coming out. You don't want it just dripping. That's drenched soil, and that's going to lead to stem rot. So just moist. And so what you could do is you can stick this stem on the soil or the moss, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So what's going to happen with this? Okay, this is a little longer than half an inch, but it'll do. It's not bad, but it'll do. And then now what it's doing here is it's trying to conserve all of its energy to keep this leaf alive, but there's no roots. You can't get a plant with no roots, like a full plant. So what I would do, and you don't have to do this, but if you want, this takes time and patience to get a fuller plant. And okay, anyways, so what I would do is I would cut this leaf in half. So it's still getting light to photosynthesize to keep the plant alive, and it's also not taking all its energy to keep that whole leaf alive. Now it's just doing half of it. For what I would do with this is, honestly, I would cut this even shorter. And for the bottom, when I cut my plants, I use the bottom at a 45 degree and the top straight. That's how I know from the top and the bottom when I get a bunch of nodes and I want to save them, save the plant like this. This was a bunch of little cuttings of nodes, and you put the root down in the dirt, set it on the dirt or the moss, and have the leaf upright. If you put it this way, the leaf will get cockeyed. I don't know if that was appropriate to say, but it gets cockeyed, or sometimes it'll rot away, and you just, not every node is a win. And so the more nodes you have, the more potential full plant you'll get. If you keep one long strand, yeah, leaves will develop. But I find cutting nodes, you have more leaves that sprout out quicker. And I just wanted to show you the option of what you could do. Well, I don't want to go there yet. So here are some of the cuttings I have. I've taken it out for you. These were sitting in there maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And this was the original root. If I would have had this the medium that I was sitting in too moist, that would have rotted. So I had it in just the right amount of moisture for it to not rot, yet develop that new portion that you see right there. New roots will be white in color. This is more of an aerial root, which has created brown, and some people don't get luck with that when it'll rot, have a higher risk of rot. Here's another one. It doesn't look white, but it is. This one's kind of a weird one. I'm just not going to show that. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a little bit more examples before I show you what I do with it. So rip the leaf off, side to side is what I usually do. If you just pull, sometimes it damages the stem. So side to side. And then look. It's kind of covering it, but there's a little triangle right there, and then there's the root. There's 2 potential spots for roots. So when you're about to propagate these, you want to rip any brown or any debris, because it will eventually die and it could lead to rot. See the little triangle right there? And then 2 potential roots. And then this is the top. And do that. Potential root, or leaf, and 3 potential roots. Okay, so what I would do with that, now that I know this is the top, cut the top flat, cut the bottom at a 1/2 inch at a 45 degree, top straight, bottom a little bit longer, 45 degrees, top flat, bottom 45 degrees. No, it's a little bit steeper than 45 degrees. Okay. So you have the option to put it in moist dirt, like I explained, or you can put it on dirt. I mean on sphagnum. So this is what I was talking about the greenhouse deal. From my experience, plants, in order to root, need humidity and that warmth. So by creating a greenhouse with moisture condensating up at the top here, helps encourage root growth. I got this from Red Robin, if you really want to know. I think it's perfect because it already had these pre-cut ventilation holes. It is important to ventilate your plants. Sometimes you can tend to overwater, and I'll show you how to water this. So you were asking about, is it necessary to have dirt at the bottom of this tray? It's not necessary, but I find with certain cuttings, like the Ruby Cascade video, propagation video, roots that are very, very fine and thin, like Hoyas and the Ruby Cascade peperomia, the String of Turtles peperomia, I'll literally take the sphagnum and the roots will be in the dirt, and I'll take that and just put it in a pot. But as far as philodendrons and pothos go, it's not that necessary. But the reason why I do it is because, one, when you first start a greenhouse, you want to have that perfect moisture, and it creates that moisture, and you don't have to often water it, opposed to just having the moss, which is more aerated and will dry out. The dirt keeps the moisture in this greenhouse longer. That's why I do that. The second reason why I do that is because it encourages the roots, because since it stays moist for longer, it encourages the roots to go into that soil, and that's what you want, roots, right? So you can have your plant. So I have dirt at the bottom of this, and then I placed the moist dirt, the moist sphagnum in there, and then so how I do that is I take my cutting, and you see the root there, I literally just stick it on top, kind of press it in just a little bit to like press against that root, but not too tight, because you want the air. It's the humidity, that's the secret. Now this one has no roots, right? And that's probably what you've got. Just set it on top, kind of press it in there, but not bury it, because if you bury it and you have too much moisture, it's gonna die. But if you don't have enough moisture and it's up above the sphagnum, it'll dehydrate and your stem will start getting wrinkly. And if you start noticing that, moisten your soil or your sphagnum. So I'm just setting the root down with the leaves upright, because if you have them upright, the leaves upright, you won't get cockeyed leaves or stemming coming up. So here's an example of having too wet of medium, and I was experimenting and I just had it down. Like here's an example where I poked it down, but I also kept it longer, and you see that it's starting to yellow. Well, now it's taking its energy down here to keep this alive opposed to creating roots. Hence, it takes longer. So what I would do in this situation, cut it in half, stick it in the moss, the moist moss. I just stuck it down again. The thing about gardening is you're your own scientist, right? And they all won't survive, not all of them, but if you master this, you have higher chances of getting more success. So it just takes practice. Everything in life to be better takes practice. You're not born a champion. Champions practice. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, so what I do, give it one last mist, a light mist because it's already moist. I mist the lid too, and I close it. I got enough ventilation holes here. Just kind of push it down. Bam, that's done. And so what you'll end up with once the roots are white and long enough, about an inch long, ½ inch will even do, you get soil. I like to use a chunky mix. I have a video on that. You can also, with philodendrons and pothos, you want to have a little bit more of that peat moss in there. So I use peat moss, cocoa core, cocoa husk, charcoal, and perlite. Peat moss soil. And you want more peat moss soil with philodendrons. You can get away with making a chunky mix. I do that for some of mine, but for these little starts, I guess I do the chunky mix mostly, but I guess for the bigger philodendrons, I add a little bit more dirt. So this is what I did. So for this example, I set the nodes on top of the soil and pinned them down. This is going to be at my shop eventually. It's not ready yet. It was just like those nodes with the leaf, and it just takes about, well, now that the growing season's coming, it'll take less time because it's warming up. It'll take less time to grow new leaves, but when they're fully developed, or when they're developing roots, you can do the tug test. And I know there's roots, there's resistance here. Some people will bury their stems, and I'll show you that too, but this is just an example of me burying the dirt. So the roots, and it's very tedious, but that's what you get when you make individual nodes. But in the end, you get the end result, you get a fuller plant. Yeah, this is going to be a gorgeous plant. So if you're looking at this, there's some yellowing on the stems there. I will cut that off probably after this video. So that's the Siltipicana, and then this needs some watering, but I've sold a few of these at my Etsy shop. If you look at my reviews, you can see the full plant when it's grown up. So this is not ready. This is not near as ready, but I did the same thing. I started just in the sphagnum moss, and yeah, once the roots develop, and you do the tug test, you can take that pin out, or you could leave them in. It doesn't hurt. Like right here, I have a pin right now. This is still a fairly new plant. It needs watering, but yeah, these were all little nubs with leaves coming, and then they open up, and it just takes time. The smaller, another thing with philodendrons and pothos, they like to be root bound, so I would start small. This is just a 2-inch pot, and then move to a 4-inch pot, then move to a 6-inch pot, because when you transplant, try not to break up the soil, but it needs new nutrients to get those nice leaves. So the ones I'm showing you are these are starter plants. This I'm catering to just take home. It's ready. You don't have to do anything. So the roots will eventually fill this up. So the bigger your pot, the longer it's going to take for the roots to fill it up, obviously. So here's another one. This is a Pothos Enjoy. I have this up at my shop for cheap. This is just only 2 cuttings, but one's a top cutting, which has more leaves. And the difference between this one and this one is I actually stuck the bottom of the stem in, and I knew I was risking having these leaves rot, because if you cover with dirt some of these leaves, they could potentially die. But I knew this plant was already strong, and I was just taking the risk and experimenting. And then here's another. I find with the Addisonii, with thicker root or thicker stems, you can poke them in the dirt. This is just a new one. I'm giving these ones away to some friends. But these ones I just stuck in, and I try not to cover the leaf. I just stick the dirt or even the potential root in there. Once they, sometimes there's extra nubs, so I try to encourage the root to go down. Another tip is you can bottom water, which will keep the top dry, which won't rot the leaves if you have them up there, and it'll promote that root growth at the bottom. And when you need to know to transplant, you'll see roots coming through the bottom. So anyways, here's another example of me just placing the nodes up top, and if you do the tug test, it's really in there. So I find that Addisonii is really easy to propagate. This one I propagated. I was transferring my Philodendron brandy out of its basket and broke a couple stems, and I was so heartbroken because I really like that plant. And so what I did with that is I did the moss, and then I actually just stuck the stem straight down. But if you look, you have, or I have, little roots, potential roots. So if I really wanted to, that's a node right there. If I really wanted to, I could cut that and make another potential plant. Instead, what it's going to do right now is eventually grow off a tip and grow another leaf. So I really don't like the look of this, honestly, because there's nodes at the bottom, and here I've got these just random stems up at the top. Like here's a good example, is right here. The stem or the roots at the bottom, there is another, I guess, node, but it's not as long, and in this leaf is just, it's just gonna take time to sprout. So anyhow, if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Facebook or Instagram. It's the same name. It's Plant Junkie with a Y Creations. And you can, if you like this video, you can like, subscribe, and I will be posting more care, propagations, videos. And I think that's all, guys.